हाय मनोज जी, कैसे हैं आप?
फाइन विकी जी, हाउ आर यू? आप कैसी हैं?
मैं अच्छी हूँ। आपको मेरी आवाज क्लियर आ रही है क्या?
200%. What about
Okay.
you?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's not like very loud, but I think it's fine.
Look, let me try more of it. Mm. Is it any better?
A little, but I think good enough to continue. How's your week going, sir?
Generally tough, lots of traveling. I'm again traveling tomorrow morning to Kolkata
Wow, okay.
and northeastern states from there.
Okay. Finally, we are meeting. Thank you so much for dialing at this hour. I really appreciate that.
I mean, something or the other was going wrong in all the meetings we had fixed.
Right. सर शुरू करते हैं। मैंने आपका 9 महीने पहले वाली एक स्पीच देखी है कोविड पर, विच इज वेरी इमोशनल, विच वेंट वायरल एंड जिससे लोग काफी प्रभावित भी हुए हैं। और हम अभी देख रहे हैं कि फिर से कोविड केसेस 3,500 से ज्यादा हो रहे हैं। अभी न्यूज है कि 50 लोग 24 घंटे में दे हैव डाइड। आपके अकॉर्डिंग व्हाट डू यू थिंक एक्शंस गवर्नमेंट कुड और शुड टेक that might prevent another wave?
Look, I have always maintained, particularly after the second wave and the kind of devastation we saw in everything, health infrastructure, forget the health infrastructure. When the government of the day is reluctant to acknowledge the problem itself, policy interventions, other things come second. You have to primarily acknowledge that there is a crisis at hand. If you deny the crisis, if you become an ostrich, then the devastation is complete. And particularly in view of the fact that the public health infrastructure in my country, and I don't blame the present government only, I actually would go on to say that in last 40 years, particularly post-80s, our focus shifted from the public health infrastructure. In a country like ours, and you are familiar with this country.
Yes.
Public health and infrastructure, public education, they are the key in terms of affordability, accessibility, etc. I think we saw the worst faces in worst images in second wave. And now, although post-Omicron, that the third, this is fourth, to speak so, hospitalization has not been demanded at any say SOS level. But the fact is, more often than not, what we see our governments, including the central government, rather beginning from the central government to state governments, they wake up when it is too late. And even when they wake up, it's the first approach is to deny anything happened. You remember we were struggling for oxygen, and the governments, I'm using plural, central government and the state governments, they said there is no dearth of oxygen, there is no oxygen crisis. So I would only advise, and which I have been doing here on a daily basis, telling my government or governments, the state governments, please first learn to acknowledge you are facing a crisis. After you acknowledge you are facing a crisis, then go above partisan approach and fight it in a wholesome manner. That's what is needed, whether it is COVID or any other kind of crisis which we face collectively as a body.
Thank you. So I think this is the most logical answer I have received so far on this question. So thank you. Sir, Muslim rights की बात करते हैं। अभी जहांगीरपुरी violence हुआ. I think it happened on April 16th, and then on 19th there were many houses that were demolished. So it was very sad to see, and critics says that mostly the Muslim community is impacted. So do you think that Muslims in India are facing social, political, and economic exclusion? What do you think is their future?
I'll tell you, BKG, to put it very straight, I'm one of those persons who have worked very closely with Muslims. Why I say this? Because most of my writings and my PhD itself is on communal right. I believe a particular narrative is being written in India. And I won't say it began in 2014 when Modi ji came to power. There was a subterranean thing going on for last so many years. I don't want to waste your time in talking about the historical trajectory. You know, post-Nehruvian India, and when I say post-Nehruvian India, that is beginning 27th of May 1964, when Nehru died. Nobody thought of shaping the kind of India Nehru dreamt of. Things continued in the shadow of Nehru for so many years. But suddenly, when that colossus, gentle colossus, what Professor Hiren Mukherjee called him in his biography of Nehru, then suddenly the majoritarian feeling or the majoritarian approach in governance started finding a kind of space through window and now finally through the front door. It's all about disenfranchising Muslims. And when I say disenfranchising, please let me make it very clear. It's not about voting. I have the right to vote, but my right to vote does not make me equal citizen. I mean,
yeah,
there is a process whereby marginalization of Muslims, and together with Muslims, I'll also tell you, other subaltern groups and communities, they are being marginalized from the mainstream discourse. So what happened in Jahangirpuri? Suddenly, I must tell you, my country is facing a huge problem in terms of hunger deaths. We are very poorly placed in hunger index. We are one of those countries which is facing a massive unemployment crisis. 5 decades, the unemployment rate is at the high. But you know, my country is not talking about unemployment or hunger. We are talking about loudspeakers. We are talking about bulldozers.
hardly.
That is not only about misplaced priority. That is what the majoritarian ethos, the government of the day senses that it's better to work on these kind of issues which help us staying away from the core issues which impact the thali of a poor person, which impact the neighborhood of a poor person. Forget poor, let me not talk through this category. An ordinary family is impacted, their food is impacted, their neighborhood is impacted, their employment is impacted. Yet, we are talking about Azan, Ramjan, Bajrang Bali, bulldozer, and things like that. So what happened in Jahangirpuri is not a standalone thing. Things are happening in Karnataka, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, even my home state, Bihar. You know, there's a pattern to this madness. And this madness is methodical. And because it is methodical, it should scare everyone, to friends like you in US, to our friends in India, because ultimately it is about decimating the idea of rule of law. Democracies like America and India can only survive if we believe in the essentials of rule of law. Unfortunately, there is a statue, if you remember the courts in India, the lady with
the blindfold.
Blindfolded and taraju in her hand. And that's the image of justice. Now, there is, in a very subtle way, that image is being replaced by a bulldozer. And that's a scary image. That should scare everyone, even those who love bulldozers.
Speaking of justice, another question pops in my mind where we see Chief Justice of India, where Rjd Ramana has kind of given a very brave speech in a joint conference. I think usme chief ministers bhi the, and even Prime Minister was there in front of him, and he has criticized, saying something like reference of Lakshman Rekha, and we shouldn't be, bypassing the constitution and all those things that he has pointed out. We shouldn't be disobeying the court. I think this is what he's particularly said. So what is your take on that?
Look, I tell you, he has been speaking about for last so many months. He is going to complete his tenure, if I'm not wrong, within a couple of months. He has been giving signal to the executive. You know, whether it is US, again I compare. I would keep on comparing. America is probably the oldest democracy, and we are the largest democracy. So the oldest and largest have certain things in common. That is independent judiciary. Now, in certain ways, what we saw in recent times, the executive going for overreach, even when the judiciary gave a kind of signal that stop this. For instance, on sedition law, many a time the judiciary has said that please stop this nonsense. The government of the day and the nation, they are not one and the same thing. I remember Howard Zinn, a pro-people historian from US, he kept on saying, and so many other people, that if I love my country, I would certainly critique my government, because my idea of my country to be lovely, to be loved, is based on the fact how my government works towards making her lovely or lovable. If there is a disconnect, we shall speak. I think not only Chief Justice NV Ramana ji, others have also been saying. Now, if the executive or the legislature doesn't listen to it, I tell you, we are heading towards a crisis. A majoritarian state has a mistaken belief, and I call it a mistaken belief, that we have won an election, we can do anything. Look, winning election gives you lots of temptation, but avoid those temptations if they are not in sync with constitutional morality or constitutional propriety. One president of yours, the former one, he crossed that limit. And if we see our case closely, we see our government trying to cross that limit. And that is going to hamper the very idea of India as a nation state and Indian democracy, with the solid backing of a constitution, which I consider is one of the best documents in the world.
Agreed, totally. So changing the gears here a little bit, Abhi, let's talk about the RJD party. Abhi, I was reading somewhere CM Nitish Kumar and RJD leader have met in Iftar party, and the differences between them are reducing. So, and even your RJD president, Jagannath Singh, has invited Nitish Kumar for, I think, merging with the party and considering if Tejashwi Yadav ji is kind of a leader. What is going on? Are there any chances that the alliance could actually happen?
I'll tell you why it happens. In times of when bulldozers hog the limelight, and in times when loudspeakers are actually the daily news diet for the people, a bonhomie, a coming together of people on Iftar, it becomes a news. I'm telling you very frankly, because of COVID, last 2 years, India and particularly Bihar, which has a tradition of organizing Iftar party across political spectrum, that did not take place in 2020 and 2021. This year, because of less COVID cases, it was organized. You know, meeting each other, whether it is Holi, Diwali, Eid, Bakrid, Ramzan, or for that matter, Guru Parab or Christmas, I think this has been a tradition of the very Nehruvian idea of shared coexistence in India. People are reading too much. But I'll tell you one thing, because I don't want to speculate. Nitish ji and my president Lalu ji, they came from the same political tree of Jayaprakash Narayan. Nitish ji made some compromises. It was his choice. I don't wish to comment. But if he wishes to come back, he has to put lots of delete buttons And Rikiji, if you, all of us, if you talk through the language of computer, after a point of time, delete buttons don't help you. That's my worry. That's my worry, that there are so many things in the public domain, particularly 2017 episode, when the entire mandate was given to a political party which lost the election very badly. We went out of power, but the fact is we are the largest political party in Bihar. So let's see how things unfold. But one thing is very certain. If Nitish Ji has to call it quits in politics, he has to do it on a very, very high. And that high would demand that if not delete button, he has to reboot his system.
Well said. So speaking on those lines, let's talk about RJD legacy. So Laluji's son, Tej Pratap Yadav ji, abhi un par koi, I think, assault ka kuch allegation tha, and then he said he would resign. And we have heard that there has been a friction between both brothers. What do you think? Would it resolve over time? What does the future of the party looks like?
I tell you very frankly, this is all very local media kind of diet, a juicy diet for YouTubers in Bihar. It has nothing beyond it for RJD. Tejashwi Ji has been established as a leader. He won a great victory for the entire alliance. There is only difference of 7 seats between NDA and RJD plus. And there is only a difference of 12,000 votes between NDA and RJD plus. So I think these are, I know in 24/7 YouTube kind of media, every channel which is fighting to give you the breaking news, it acquires certain values. But whatever little you have heard is within the family, it shall be resolved, number one. Number two, there is no dispute about the fact that Tejashwi Prasad Yadav, forget only RJD, whether RJD has accepted him as a leader, Bihar has accepted him as a leader, and without naming, our principal rival is BJP. And I can tell you the top BJP leaders believe that if in Bihar, if there is a mass leader today, post Laluji, post Nitish Ji, it is Tejashwi Prasad Yadav. And I'll end it here.
Yeah. So Laluji is released now on bail, and I think what he has gone through his sort of quite number of years, I think, time. Was there any celebration? How was it received at emotional level when he was out?
Look, I'll tell you, emotionally, all of us were overwhelmed. This gentleman, Laluji, I'll tell you, you are familiar with my estate. We had seen a grammar of politics, to use the word of Lasky, since till 1990s. He changed it together with the legacy of Karpuri Thakur. And he suffered because of it. You know, when people in power, they lose, or they sense they are losing, they resort to lot many things. History will bear witness to the fact that the people who could not defeat Laluji electorally, politically, they took a different, course, and that is called judiciary. And they were fairly successful. I won't deny, they were successful. But ultimately, one day, maybe after 1 year or 2 years, when we talk again on this, I'll tell you that we'll have reasons to tell you Satyamev Jayate. Because if you see, I have read all the documents. I don't wish to comment on judiciary. Section 120B of IPC, which talks about conspiracy. I'm a university professor. I teach in Delhi University. I was heading my university at one point of time, my department. For some of my decisions, anytime anybody can, if they wish, can put me under 120B of conspiracy. So I'll leave it there, and posterity will judge what he did, what he didn't do, but ultimately he changed the politics of Bihar.
मनोज जी, अभी ना एक बहुत ही टॉपिक डिस्कशन में है, भारत की राष्ट्रभाषा हिंदी होनी चाहिए कि नहीं होनी चाहिए. आई नो एक कन्नड़ सुपरस्टार है, उन्होंने बोला हिंदी राष्ट्रभाषा नहीं है, एंड देन अजय देवगन रिप्लाइड, एंड देन एवरीबॉडी रिप्लाइड, एंड नाउ दिस हैज बिकम अ बिग न्यूज. सो व्हाट इज इन योर ओपिनियन? आई मीन नहीं, हिंदी में पूछना चाहिए मुझे क्वेश्चन, आपके हिसाब से
मैं आपको स्पष्ट तौर पर बताता हूँ. मैं हिंदी भाषी हूँ, मेरी भाषा मैथिली है. पैदा होने के बाद माँ बाप से मैथिली में बात की, पला बढ़ा हिंदी बोलना शुरू किया, फिर अंग्रेजी भी सीखी, और फिर जब पार्लियामेंट में आया तो मैं बहुत सैंडविच की तरह रहता हूँ. साउथ के जो एमपीज हैं वो मुझसे चाहते हैं कि आई शुड स्पीक इन इंग्लिश, और जो नॉर्थ के एमपीज हैं कटिंग अक्रॉस पॉलिटिकल पार्टी, वो कहते हैं मनोज जी आप हिंदी में बोलो. मैं बैलेंस करता हूं, थोड़ा अंग्रेजी में थोड़ी हिंदी में बोलता हूं. देखिए, ये किसी को मुगालता नहीं होना चाहिए. आप हिंदी को राष्ट्रभाषा बनाने की ये जिद जो आपकी है ना, जिसमें एक डोमिनेंस की लैंग्वेज है, ये हिंदी का नुकसान कर रही है. इंडिया जिसको कहते हैं ना आर्टिकल 1 में यूनियन ऑफ स्टेट्स, जब आप कहते हैं यूनियन ऑफ स्टेट्स, उसकी लैंग्वेज अलग है, फेथ अलग है, कल्चर अलग अलग है. अगर आप कहिएगा कि हिंदी होनी चाहिए, तो बेसिकली मेरा मानना है कि आप हिंदी के समर्थक भी नहीं है. हिंदी का जो भी प्रचार प्रसार हुआ है अलग अलग इलाकों में, वो किसी सरकार ने नहीं किया है, वो एक स्वतः स्फूर्त धारा रही है, कभी लोकप्रिय मीडियम से, कभी फिल्मों से, कभी थिएटर से. लेकिन कोई गृह मंत्री, चाहे आज के हों या पुराने वाले हों, कोई ये कहें कि हिंदी का प्रचार प्रसार, मेरा सीधे मानना है कि हिंदी को राष्ट्रभाषा बनाने की ये जो प्रभुत्व वाली जुबान है ना, ये हिंदुस्तान के बहुलवादी संस्कृति और बहुल भाषाई चरित्र के साथ अन्याय होगा. और जो आइडिया ऑफ इंडिया है ना, आप इस प्लॉट को डिसमेंटल करते हैं. मैं तो आगाह करूंगा, 1960s में इंडिया ने बहुत भुगता भाषा के सवाल पर. जिन लोगों ने इतिहास नहीं पढ़ा है ना, वो ऐसी बातें करते हैं. अगर इतिहास पढ़े होते तो वो बहुत ही संजीदगी के साथ आगे बढ़ते. राष्ट्रभाषा नाम की कोई चीज नहीं है.
वेल सेड. मनोज जी, वैसे मैंने आपको कभी डिबेट्स में नहीं देखा है, एंड आई थिंक हम लोग उस दिन बात भी कर रहे थे कि द रीजन यू डोंट गो इन डिबेट्स, बहुत ही जो फॉर्मेट होता है, इट्स वेरी फनी दैट इट्स वेरी ड्रामेटिक एक्चुअली. और सैड बात यह है कि लोग रैशनली मुद्दों पर नहीं सोचते हैं, इश्यूज पर नहीं सोचते हैं. वो या तो मतलब एकदम राइट या लेफ्ट, जो भी उनकी पार्टी करे ठीक ही करेगी, एंड दे जस्ट कीप दैट काइंड ऑफ माइंडसेट. So what do you think because I feel like media is such a powerful tool, it can brainwash sometimes for good. So what do you think where the future in terms of that is going? और अभी ऐसा तो अमेरिका में भी होता है कि जो राइट है, राइट विंग है, लेफ्ट विंग है, उनके चैनल्स होते हैं, पर इंडिया में आई थिंक इट इज गोइंग अ लिटिल मोर एक्सट्रीम, एंड sometimes their debates are like very funny. What's your opinion on that?
I'll tell you. मैं debates में जाता था. Most probably I stopped going after 2018. After 2018, and particularly after 2019, after Modi ji's second election, you know, somewhere I realized that the debates are actually cacophony, to tell you very frankly. And every night when I joined those debates, I had difficult time having a good sleep. It was impacting my
mental health
and so many mental health. But I'll tell you about America. Howard Zinn once said that America decides to go for a war watching Fox News. And similarly in my country, there are channels, and you are very right, I can't name one. In fact, there is a pattern. All the channels would want India to go for war simultaneously with A, B, C, D, E, F, all the countries. Probably they don't realize. I think we need to have a kind of understanding. There is some understanding coming, though quite late, amongst the media houses that we have gone too far. Actually, too far in the sense that in several cases, there is an unbridgeable gap between people and communities. My only advice through you, if they listen to you and my voice matters, I'll tell them. Ultimately, when this cacophony, when this warmongering, when this hate-filled agenda destroys whom you want to get destroyed, it will look for new target. And nobody will be, as it is said, at the end, all of us shall be dead.
Yes.
Germany tells that. Germany tells us that. And we are not willing to understand this. Look, I have been talking to you. You have asked me so many questions, and neither you nor I have lost cool. Can't we have conversation? The art of conversation is lost in the media.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Yes. I think this is what the major problem is. My point is my point and it's always right. So putting that and imposing and pushing it, अभी वो जहांगीरपुरी वाली बात मेरे को फिर से याद आ रही है कि एक ही वर्ग को सपोर्ट करने लगते हैं कि हम ही सही हैं, वही पुश करने लगते हैं. There is no, sometimes it's not about the sides you take. Sometimes it's always about the right thing to do. टॉक ऑन इश्यूज, टॉक ऑन दी, आप मुद्दों पे बात कीजिए, चाहे वो आप किसी भी पार्टी के हो. जरूरी नहीं है कि बीजेपी हमेशा सही हो, जरूरी नहीं है आरजेडी सही हो, जरूरी नहीं है कांग्रेस सही हो. वी ऑल कैन मेक मिस्टेक्स.
None of us have the monopoly over the truth, but the important thing is, are we in search of truth or are we in search of truth? This is the distinction.
Yes, sir. I'm so glad I have this conversation with you, and very intellectual. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so